Welcome back to the Nerdy Grill and welcome to the 9th video in this ranking every episode from every Doctor's series. Now I do this in a tier list format and I've been doing it in reverse order. So I first started with the 15th Doctor played by Ncuti Gatwa, and then in the last video I ranked every single 6th Doctor story from the Colin Baker era. All those videos are up on the channel, so if you want to check those out then please feel free to do so, because today we are going to be moving on and having a little look at ranking every single 5th Doctor story played by the amazing Peter Davison, who I have managed to meet at a Comic-Con before, and he is a lovely guy, and hopefully I'll be able to meet him again so I can get him to sign some of the other collection box sets. Hopefully season 21 will come out at some point soon, so Peter's era will then be complete. So keep in mind, whenever I do these videos, it is just my personal opinion, and I'll be ranking their TV appearances only. So for Peter Davison, it'll be from Castrovalva to the Caves of Androzani. And in my personal opinion, when I think back on Doctors, I would say that Peter Davison had one of the hardest jobs. I would say multiple Doctors obviously had difficult jobs, like Patrick Troughton probably had the hardest job, you know, taking over as the first brand new face of the show after William Hartnell couldn't continue. So I'd say he's had a really tough ride. But I would say that Peter Davison obviously had a pretty tough time because he had some pretty big shoes to fill, because he was coming off the back of Tom Baker, the longest running Doctor, who at that point had been the Doctor for over 7 years. So for most people, Tom was the only Doctor they knew. So Peter really had to make his mark. And in Peter's era, he's got some fantastic stories, as you'll see when we get into this ranking. But let's waste no more time and jump straight into this ranking of every single 5th Doctor story. Hey, and here is my tier list ranking every 5th Doctor episode from Castrovalva all the way to the Caves of Androzani. 3 full seasons to check out for Peter Davison. So same thing before, we got 5 different categories. So we've got the top of the shop, so the best of the best. Whoever I feel like, it's absolutely splendid. Then we've got the good stories, so not quite amazing, but they are still really good stories. We've got, for some people, small beautiful events is what life is all about. Then we've got the stories which I think are okay, so they're neither good nor bad. There's a probability of anything. Statistically speaking, if you gave typewriters to a tree full of monkeys, they'd eventually produce the works of William Shakespeare. Then we've got the bad stories, the stories that, in my opinion, they're not terrible, they're not worst of the worst, but they're not good either. So they are just bad stories. So I'm not here as your prisoner, Davros, but your executioner. And finally, these stories I think are bad, they're terrible. So ones that I struggle to rewatch. So we've got It Doesn't End There. That is how it all begins again, with a killing. It doesn't end. That ends as it always has done, in chaos and despair. It ends as it begins, in the darkness. So let us start with Castrovalva, which followed obviously the departure of Tom Baker in the end of Logopolis, and also, you know, finishes off the New Beginnings trilogy. So you had the Keeper of Traken, Logopolis, and then Castrovalva. And I think for a Doctor's first story, I would say Castrovalva is an okay story. I wouldn't personally say it is anything fantastic, but I wouldn't say it's anything bad. I do like the first couple of parts. I like it when the Doctor is, you know, sort of going a bit crazy in the TARDIS. He's struggling. He's got that post-regeneration, like amnesia and stress, and his brain's all over the place. He flitters between different incarnations, you know, and he's tearing apart Tom Baker's scarf in the TARDIS, which gets me every single time, hits me in the feels. But I like the first 2 parts, because basically the Doctor and co are escaping from the Master, escaping from the security at the Pharos Project. You know, the Master's still chasing them down. They enter the TARDIS. Adric goes missing. We find out that he's been kidnapped by the Master to use in his own nefarious means. And the Doctor and co are sort of hurtling towards this great explosion where the universe was first built and put together, the Big Bang, so to speak. And then the second half is basically in this made-up land of Castrovalva where everything is confusing. It's supposed to be a tranquil place, but actually it's somewhere quite confusing for the Doctor, because the Doctor needs to recover from his regeneration. It's an alright story, don't get me wrong. The cast are all pretty good. But the pacing does slow down when you get to Castrovalva. Once they're not in the TARDIS anymore, it sort of falls apart a little bit, which is why I only put it as okay. Fort of Doomsday, in my opinion, is a bad story. I'm not a huge fan of Fort of Doomsday, and I believe this was the very first story that Peter Davison actually filmed as the Doctor, and you can kind of tell, because the way he acts in Castrovalva is vastly different to how he acts in Fort of Doomsday. You can tell that he's more used to the role in Castrovalva as opposed to Fort of Doomsday. But it's just all the characters feel off, all the companions feel off. Nyssa gets put out of action by the end of this story, and then is out of action for the whole of Kinder. Tegan is just really annoying, like super annoying, because she's just adamant she just wants to leave. Adric is just, well, being Adric, but he's sort of siding with, you know, the villain's Monarch, and the Doctor is sort of neither here nor there. You know, so none of your core team really feel justified or feel, you know, complete. Something feels off about all of them. And it's just a bit of a mess, really. They're on this space station, which is filled with different people from different cultures and planets. And they're ruled by Monarch and his two little do-gooders who are, you know, are traveling somewhere. I think they're traveling to Earth to try and, you know, like populate it and take over more planets and this, that, and the other. And Doctor's got to stop them, basically. But yeah, I'm just not a huge fan of Fort of Doomsday. It's not one that I go back to rewatch very often. And I know for a lot of people, it's not really their favourite. It's not their go-to story for Peter, anyway. Kinder. I would say Kinder, for me, is okay. Now, this might shock some people, because I know some people think Kinder is amazing. And I can see why. And don't get me wrong, Kinder is a good story. But for me, I'd only say it's okay. I love all the stuff with the Mara. I love all the stuff that goes on with Tegan, where Tegan gets basically entrapped in the Mara's realm and is sort of forced to let the Mara take over in order to get her out. You know, she's living like this endless nightmare. I think all the visuals are brilliant. And in the updated special effects version on the Blu-ray box set with how the Mara looks, it is fantastic. The snake tattoo on her arm, brilliant. The way Tegan acts when she's a possessed Mara creature, fantastic. You know, Nyssa's out of action after the previous story, but Adric again is really naive, really annoying in this story. You know, you can see why he was the one who got chosen by the end to be removed from the core cast. Nothing against Matthew Waterhouse at all. I think he's brilliant. I just think he was better with Tom than he was with Peter, personally. But yeah, the visuals in the story, brilliant, lovely. Love the location footage. Yeah, not the location footage, the setting that they're in. You know, the outside world of Kinder. I also like the internal little base they got going on, where there's some people doing some research on the Kinder tribe and stuff. There's some really weird characters, like the professor guy who's researching them. He goes a bit mad. There's another character, another general-esque character who sort of goes a bit crazy, stir crazy. It's very weird, but it's a bit of fun, but it's not one that I would say for me is a cult classic that I know some people would. The Visitation, however, is immediately going in to top of the shop. You know, fantastic story, great pseudo-historical story. I think the Pteroleptils are a brilliantly designed creature, really, really good. I love the Grim Reaper-looking android as well, very creepy. I love the setting, you know, and I just think it's hilarious that the Doctor inadvertently causes the Great Fire of London. I think that's pretty interesting. I love all the characters in there. They're not annoying. You know, they actually do something. They actually use Tegan a little bit better in this story. Tegan's sort of come to the realization now in this story that, you know, she's kind of potentially happy with just staying with the Doctor, because she's realized that he's not going to get her back, especially when in this story they land in the right place, what would be Heathrow, but obviously really far in the past. So, and that obviously annoys Tegan at the start, but by the end she sort of comes round. But yeah, I think it's a really good story. Pacing is really good. The musical score is brilliant. And like I said, the costume design as well, brilliant. Absolutely love this story. Definitely worthy. Definitely needs to be top of the shop for me. Black Orchid, this is going to surprise some people. I think this is a good story because this is just a short, fun little two-part story. It's also a doppelganger-esque story because there is two Nyssas in this story as well. And it's the only time on screen for Peter Davison that he actually uses the cricket outfit and the cricket gear to play cricket. You know, the Doctor that dresses and constantly does cricket puns and stuff actually plays a game of cricket. and I think it's good because it's quite a light-hearted story to sandwich between The Visitation, which was quite a dark story, and then Earthshock, which is going to be quite a traumatic story. So it's quite like the calm before the storm. So basically, the Doctor and co land on Earth, and they get mistaken for like a cricket player or an old friend of this guy, and they get taken, they get tangled up in basically a murder mystery whodunit, so to speak. A bit like an Agatha Christie style mystery as well. It's definitely in that sort of style of house as well. But yeah, it's just a short, fun little two-parter. I quite like Black Orchid, and I think it's because it's quite quick paced and just a bit of light-hearted fun is why I think it's so good. It gives me like the equivalent of what Boomtown is from season 1 with Christopher Eccleston vibes. Just that light-hearted, funny story. The calm before the storm, and I quite like the calm before the storm stories. Speaking of which, Earthshock, the return of the Cybermen after a very long time of being off screen. Revenge of the Cybermen from Tom Baker's first season on the show. Earthshock is a fantastic return to form for the Cybermen, because unfortunately the Cybermen weren't done the best in Revenge of the Cybermen, but I'll get onto that when I do the Tom Baker video. But Earthshock, they were perfect. Not revealing their name in the title, them being the part 1 cliffhanger done in a fantastic way. There was no hints that it was the Cybermen in part 1. They just appeared at the end of part 1, and it was done brilliantly. Love all the references to the previous Cybermen stories, like the 10th Planet, Wheel in Space, Revenge of the Cybermen. Thought it was done great. It takes place on Earth during this little underground expedition. The Doctor and co get entangled in it. They have to defuse a bomb that the Cybermen are trying to use to, blow up the world and destroy like a conference and stuff. They get taken up to a space freighter, and the rest of the episode takes place on this space freighter. And unfortunately, this is the episode where Adric does unfortunately sacrifice himself, and we have one of the first major companion deaths of Doctor Who. Obviously, if you want to be technical, you could go back to like the first Doctor and reference Katarina, which some people do, some people don't. But obviously, in terms of proper, giving them a proper send-off, Earthshock's the first one to do that. Playing silent credits at the end as well was a really nice touch. The Cybermen on the space freighter, I thought was really, really nice. It had that enclosed feel, base under siege style story. And I think it was done really well. The Cybermen design as well for the 80s is brilliant. I love the 80s Cyberman design. Fantastic. Brilliant story. Top of the shop. For most people, this is the best Cyberman story of Classic Who. Some might say Tomb of the Cybermen as well. But Earthshock is definitely up there. Time Flight, however, is going immediately down here, and I don't think a lot of people would be surprised at me putting Time Flight down there. Time Flight is a terrible story. You can tell that the budget ran out and they used it on previous stories like Earthshock, Visitation, Kinder. They'd run out. Terrible story, terrible pacing. They've just lost Adric. How does the Doctor and co mourn him? They mourn him for maybe 10 seconds and say, oh, well, never mind. Hey, we're back at Heathrow. Let's see what we're getting up to here. Awful and really disrespectful. Goes to show that the 5th Doctor didn't really seem to care about Adric very much. If you were in any doubt of that, this story nails it in for you. Also, the Master's in this story in probably one of the most random and debatably racist disguises of all time. And he spends most of that disguise not around other people. So apart from obviously us as the audience not needing to know or meant to know that it's the Master straight away, there's no reason for him to be in the disguise, because when the Doctor finally sees him in the disguise, he almost 10 minutes later takes the disguise off, so it was pointless. And basically it's just the Master's trapped himself and needs the Doctor to help him get out of the trap that he's done for himself, pretty much. His TARDIS ain't working, he needs the Doctor's help. So he's sending planes back in time, to steal parts and to get the Doctor's attention. Really weird. They do a dupe out companion departure at the end of this, that Tegan gets left behind, leading us to believe that she's gone from the show when she immediately returns in the next episode. It's just a jumbled mess, if I'm honest. Really jumbled mess. Terrible end to the series, if I'm honest. Arc Infinity, I recently rewatched in preparation for what the travesty that was the reality war. And if I'm being honest, I don't know. It was okay. It had some interesting-esque ideas. I don't know. I don't. No, I'm putting it down here. I'm sorry. I can't. I can't. It had some interesting ideas, but it just failed on numerous levels, if I'm honest. The new design for Omega is okay, bit weird. You know, Colin Baker's also in this story, where obviously the joke comes in that the Doctor gets shot down by his previous incarnation who wants to steal his job. Good location footage though at Amsterdam, while the Doctor, Tegan, and Nyssa are chasing a corrupted Omega around who's disguised as the Fifth Doctor, but his disguise is wearing off and they need to stop him before he destroys the whole universe. Basically, yeah, the Omega just wants to come into our reality and is using the Doctor as a vessel to do so. So wants to like steal his body print, steal his body in order to exist in reality. The Doctor goes back to Gallifrey again, and because of gets framed for crimes that he didn't commit, to try and hide that there's a traitor on Gallifrey who's teaming up with Omega to help him in his plans. There's just so many different plot lines going on at once that I think they just needed to focus on one, really, just one. Bringing back Tegan as well. I mean, they tried to make it a big grand reveal in the story, but it really wasn't because she'd barely been gone. They tried to introduce us to more of her family. They gave her a new design, which I think was one of the weirdest redesigns for a companion ever. Definitely trying to be something for the dads at the time, I think, in the way that they're making her dress. It was actually uncomfortable. I missed her air hostess outfit, but at that point, apparently she'd lost her job. She'd been fired, so yeah, that's kind of the reason. But yeah, I'm not a huge fan of Arc of Infinity, unfortunately. And now, after finding out what's happened to Omega, it makes this story even more like, ugh. Snake Dance, I feel the same way for Snake Dance as I do for Kinder. I think both the Mara stories are just okay, you know, they're all right. You know, they go more... Like, the Mara was supposedly destroyed at the end of Kinder, according to the Doctor, but he didn't know for certain. And apparently they tried to tie something in that ever since then Tegan's been having nightmares about the Mara, and that comes to be where the Mara ends up coming back and possessing Tegan. Tegan spends the vast majority of this story possessed by the Mara, who's planning on resurrecting itself after its supposed demise on Diva Loca, which is where Kinder takes place. Martin Clunes is also in this episode as well, and it's all about this. They go to this the Sumaran Empire, this planet of the Mara, this empire which is originally run by the Mara, and there's like a festival going on celebrating the supposed destruction of the Mara. But however, Tegan's obviously brought the Mara back. So it's mostly just the Doctor and Nyssa. There's some great visuals again when Tegan is fighting for control of her own mind with the Mara, trying to, you know, push the Mara back, but is obviously failing to do so. Again, it's okay, but just nothing spectacular. Mawdryn Undead. See, Mawdryn Undead as well. I think Mawdryn Undead is definitely my favourite. I'm going to put it up here. It's definitely my favourite of the Black Guardian trilogy, you know? The Black Guardian trilogy, because I should have mentioned, season 20 is sort of like the anniversary season for Doctor Who. So every episode they were bringing back a previous companion or a previous villain from the past. So like Arc of Infinity had Omega, Snake Dance had the Mara. In Mawdryn Undead, they bring back the Black and White Guardians, and the Brigadier comes back. Even though I know originally it was supposedly meant to be Ian, but obviously due to, I think, scheduling issues or something, he couldn't do it, so they got the Brigadier, which I did always find was a bit of an odd substitute, but to be fair, the Brigadier is great, and I love Nicholas Courtney. They also introduced the new companion of Turlough, who, all through the Black Guardian trilogy, you know, Turlough ends up getting injured in a car crash. The Black Guardian offers him a chance to survive if he helps him destroy the Doctor for ruining his chances of getting the key to time back in the Tom Baker era. Turlough agrees and spends all of this episode and the next two stories trying to find ways of killing the Doctor, but obviously either refusing to do so because his conscience won't let him, or he just misses out on doing so for random reasons, you know. Yeah, and in this, you know, the Doctor meets up with the Brigadier again, who's lost his memory, due to time distortions and all going on. they have this thing where a previous Brigadier meets the future Brigadier. There's also more confusion about the timeline of UNIT, when the Brigadier supposedly retired, when did he start UNIT. It all goes a bit crazy. And you've got this alien known as Mordrin, who is trapped in like an eternal disease and eternal pain upon this spaceship and wants to be free from it. So tries to use the Doctor, being a Time Lord, uses regenerations in order to try and heal himself and his people. So you got another one of what like the TV movie is trying to do: steal the Doctor's regenerations in order to make me whole again, pretty much sort of plot lines. Yeah, I think it's a bit of fun. I quite like it, to be fair. And some of the ways Turlough tries to get the Doctor in this story is fun. He tries to literally hit him with a rock at one point, and then there's an explosion, and he like flies back and throws the rock elsewhere. And I also like the little references to previous Doctor Who stories, like when the Brigadier finally remembers who the Doctor is, and you get to see flashbacks from the Patrick Troughton era, from the Tom Baker era, from the Three Doctors and stuff. It's quite nice to see. I quite like that. I'm really into nostalgia. Then we've got Terminus. Now, I'm putting Terminus down here. Now, an original me would also put this in the same respect as Time Flight, but I'm going to be a little bit kinder to Terminus, only because I think that it's a companion departure. Nyssa leaves in this story, and I think what it tries to do is interesting. They are trapped on this like diseased spaceship. They call it it's a leper ship, okay? And it's a place full of disease. It's a medical ship that's trying to house all these diseased people that they don't know if they can cure, don't know if they can save, don't know if they have the right medicines to save them. And so it gives Nyssa something to do and to use. She even says it in her departure speech at the end. I can finally use the skills that I learned on Traken. And it's nice. I'm surprised they didn't do that more through the series. So I think that's interesting. But I think where this story fails is that because they're focusing on Nyssa, they then don't give Turlough or Tegan anything to do. And Tegan and Turlough spend practically the entire 4-part story travelling through vents underneath the whole ship, doing basically nothing, just like bickering at each other and arguing with each other. It's just mad. It's mad. They don't encounter the Doctor again until Nyssa is saying, "I'm leaving," at the very end. So it's just a waste of characters as well. I just don't understand. I mean, fair enough, you might not be able to squeeze everything in and everyone in, but for 2 of your core 3 companions to have nothing for the whole story, especially in a companion departure, you'd want Tegan in particular to, have better interactions with Nyssa in her final story than what she gets. Also, I feel like Nyssa's departure was, even though it makes sense for her to stay, it sort of came out of the blue. Like, it wasn't like through the whole story she was hinting at leaving and hinting at, "Oh, I'm a bit fed up of this now." It was just sort of like, no, I think it's time to go now. And it's like, oh, okay, it's a bit weird. But yeah, and obviously Turlough tries to stop the Doctor once or twice, but because he's trapped in a vent for most of this and just stuck with Tegan, he doesn't really get much. That's what I mean. This should be the plot line of Turlough is trying to get rid of the Doctor, because it's the Black Guardian trilogy, okay? It's not the Nyssa needs to stop this disease series. I just feel like they sort of missed the mark of what this series was supposed to be, what this little arc was meant to be. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of Terminus, and anyone who knows me, even my fiance knows, I'm not a fan of Terminus. Then we've got Enlightenment, which I think is better than Terminus. It's sort of the in the middle one for me. I don't mind it as much. You've got like this intergalactic space race which is controlled by these eternal beings, these godlike beings. Call it like the makeshift pantheon, so to speak, where they use like humans and other species to race for a bit of a fun and a bit of a laugh, and the Doctor and co get tangled up with this. The Black Guardian's getting a bit fed up with Turlough now. He wants the Doctor gone and Turlough's refusing. In the end, obviously, the Doctor does find out that Turlough is working for the Black Guardian, but sort of helps him to see the error of his ways, and the White Guardian comes back again, and obviously they end up defeating the Black Guardian, and Turlough gets recruited as a normal member of the TARDIS team. The Eternal Beings as well are interesting. The villains are not too bad. I just think, again, they had a lot going on, a lot they wanted to do, and sort of missed the mark, Again, I feel like you didn't need to make this a Black Guardian trilogy, because he doesn't really do a lot for most of the stories. Like I said, in Terminus, he's practically almost absent. It's only really Mordrin Undead that really hammers home what this arc is meant to be about. It's an okay story, though. It's nothing spectacular. The King's Demons, for me, is not a good story either. It's gone down in my estimations the more I've watched it. It's a random two-parter, which is one two-parter per Peter Davison series. It's, the Master is trying to interrupt the signing of Magna Carta. He disguises himself as one of King John's squires or knights or whatever, in one of the worst disguises I think I've ever seen for the Master. Almost like Roger Delgado levels of, he might as well not even be disguised. It was obvious that it was Anthony Ainley's Master. It's a two-part story. The Master shouldn't be used as a two-parter, because the Master doesn't even reveal himself till the end of part 1, and then you've got him doing nothing for pretty much the last 25 minutes. They introduced Chameleon, who would have been such a great companion, and I never understand why they don't use Chameleon again. I know there was issues with the robot and the animatronic or whatever it was they used, but his name is Chameleon and his purpose is he disguises as people. You could have a different actor playing Chameleon every week. You don't need to have him in robot form. I don't get why you would introduce a potential companion and then never use him again until his departure story. So weird, so stupid, if I'm honest. So I'm not a huge fan of King's Demons. Five Doctors is immediately going up here. I love the Five Doctors. I love pretty much almost all the anniversary stories. The multi-Doctor stories are all really, really good, to be perfectly honest. It's a celebration of 20 years of Doctor Who. All the incarnations up to this point make an appearance to a degree. Obviously, William Hartnell had passed away at this point, so they got Richard Hurndall to play him, who plays him a lot more stricter. He's a lot more stricter than what he was, so it's a bit of a different version, but at least you get to see one. You've got, obviously, Patrick Troughton comes back, John Pertwee comes back, Tom Baker comes back in, archive footage from Shada, which at the time was a lost story that was unfinished, so it was almost like it was new content, whereas nowadays, now we have Shada, we know that it wasn't, but Tom Baker comes back in that capacity. And obviously then Peter Davison. You've also got Anthony Ainley's Master, the Daleks, the Cybermen, the Yeti make a cameo in this as well. It's some nice stuff. It's basically the Doctor's previous incarnations are being taken out of time, put in this area on Gallifrey known as the Death Zone. We find out that it's actually Barusa who's doing it, taking the Doctor out of time so that the Doctor can lead him to gain the secrets of immortality. It's a bit of fun for the anniversary with references galore, lots of returning companions, like Susan finally comes back, even though her interactions with the other Doctors is really silly, especially with Five. There's a part in the story where Susan meets Five in the TARDIS, and the first Doctor says to Five, you know Susan, of course, and the Doctor, all he does is he says, yes, and just looks at her. This is your granddaughter. You haven't seen her for ages. You said that one day you'd come back for her. Why are you just, ignoring her? I mean, come on. Obviously, you've got Tegan, Turlough, Sarah, K9, the Brigadier. There's lots of other companions that make a return, so it's nice. It's a true celebration. Fun story. Definitely recommend it. It was actually also the first Peter Davison story I ever watched, so got a bit of a soft spot for it. Warriors of the Deep. Now, this is usually seen as a really bad story. Now, look, I will say that, yes, it's not the best. I wouldn't say it's time flight levels of bad. It is a bad story. But what I will say that saves Warriors of the Deep, and I debatably could even put it in okay, so it can fluctuate. So count it as sort of in between okay and bad, is that it's one of the darkest stories of Peter's era because nobody makes it out of this story alive apart from the Doctor, Turlough and Tegan. It's the Silurians versus the Sea Devils, which is really cool to see. Their designs are a bit funny, especially the Sea Devils. But it's all on this base under siege story again. It's got one of the funniest cliffhangers I've ever seen in the end of part 1 where the Fifth Doctor is tussling with some of the guards, falls into the water, is drowning supposedly, and Turlough basically says to Tegan, no, don't save him, he's already drowned, even after he's been in the water for less than 5 seconds. It is hilarious. But yeah, the story ends with the Doctor just surrounded by the corpses of Sea Devils, Silurians, and the crew of the space station, or the underwater station. I can't remember now if it's underwater or in space. I think it's underwater. I'm not sure. But whatever. The station crew, Sea Devils and Silurians, the corpses are all lying around them. The Doctor just looks at the camera and goes, there should have been another way. And he looks done. He looks tired. He looks beaten. He looks injured. You can tell he's fed up now. And I think that's really good. And that sets the tone for what the rest of season 21 is. It is a Doctor who is tired of losing, is losing people left, right, and centre, and is going through absolute trauma all the time. And I think it does set the tone really well. The Awakening for me, I think this for me, I'm going to put it in okay. It's quite a nice little story, to be fair. Quite calm two-parter between two dark stories again. You get to see more of Tegan's family because the Doctor takes Tegan to go see, I think it's her uncle. It's either a granddad or uncle. I can't remember which now, but goes to take Tegan to see him, finds out he's missing, and so the Doctor and co get tangled up in these recreations of war games that's going on, and they find out that this creature known as the Malice is feeding off the games, turning everyone a bit more insane, and they're going a bit darker, and they're trying to actually recreate them for real, per se, so like if they need to sacrifice someone, they'll sacrifice someone, and time is getting distorted. There's people from the past crossing over as well. It's a fun little two-parter, but a bit of a weird one. Frontios is a good story. I think Frontios is good because of the dark nature of it. Again, following on from Warriors of the Deep and it being really, really dark. The TARDIS gets destroyed, he gets pulled apart. The Doctor, Tegan and Turlough land on this planet due to the gravitational pull of these tractator creatures, which are pulling the TARDIS down so that they can use it to help them escape and help them build a better life, so to speak. You get good character development of Turlough. You find out that he is scared of the tractators because of something that they've done to him and his people in the past. So you get a bit more depth to Turlough, making him go from 2-dimensional to 3-dimensional. I think that's really, really good. The supporting cast are all really good. I think the design of the Gravis and the Tractators really good. It is just a good dark story as well. So I think, yeah, really, really good. Definitely would recommend it. Resurrection of the Daleks is going into top of the shop as well. Fantastic Dalek story. Again, super dark. And you start to get the decline now in the original Peter Davison crew, so to speak, because you get Tegan, who's been around since Logopolis in the Tom Baker era, finally decides enough is enough and I'm going to leave. This story has also one of the highest kill counts in a Doctor Who story. And again, almost everyone gets it. They don't get out okay. The only ones who survive the story realistically is the Doctor, Tegan, Turlough, Commander Lytton, who returns in the Colin Baker era in Attack of the Cybermen, his 2 little police henchmen, and Davros. Even though Davros is supposedly gone, we find out that obviously he did survive. But yeah, so Tegan has just had enough. But it is really good. The Daleks are really, really cool. They resurrect Davros because they're struggling to find a cure for this disease, which is apparently wiping them out. So they resurrect him in order to find the answer. Davros, I would say, is great. Terry Malloy plays Davros in this story for the first time. I will say that this is probably like his weakest interaction with a Doctor, because he literally shares maybe like 2 lines of dialogue with the Doctor in this story. And it's disappointing when obviously it's come off the 2 Tom Baker stories and when they've had grand speeches in both of those stories together. For him to have like barely any line of dialogue with the Doctor is a bit disappointing. But I do really like the story and I love the dark tone. I just think the Daleks on the spaceship didn't really work in this story. I don't know, there's something about it that felt off to me. But yeah, not a bad story. Pretty good. I would say it definitely, you know, the 80s Dalek stories of Resurrection, Revelation, and Remembrance are all solid stories. It's hard to deny that, to be honest. The Daleks were in their element in the 80s. Planet of Fire, again, I think this one's just okay. It's nothing spectacular. It's the last time that Peter Davison fights Anthony Ainley's incarnation of the Master, which they've got a bit of a major rivalry going on with each other anyway. You know, they've been in lots of stories together. This also is the departure of Turlough. You finally find out where Turlough comes from, his home planet, and that he used to be a prisoner, and that they want him back to stand trial for stuff that he's done in the past, but they let him off. You know, so he has the opportunity to go home scot-free, which is really nice for Turlough. It also introduces us to Companion Perry, played by Nicola Bryant, who then is the core companion for the Sixth Doctor, played by Colin Baker. It's the last story for Chameleon, even though Chameleon should have been in every story from the King's Demons. It's ridiculous. But it's also the dumbest plot for the Master. The Master has accidentally shrunk himself with his tissue compression eliminator, and he's then inhabiting the body, taking over the body of Chameleon in order to basically lure the Doctor in to help him recover himself. Basically, he basically wants to become big again, is what the Master wants. So he wants to use like the fire of this ancient planet to do that. Basically, it's silly. It's really, really silly. Very dark, though, end to the Anthony Ainley Master for Peter, because obviously Anthony Ainley comes back with Colin, but the Master, like, finally almost gets what he wants. He resurrects his true size, his true form, and he's stuck in the flame, and he's looking on at the Doctor, and the Doctor just lets him burn to a crisp. And it's like, wow. Wow, Doctor, that's evil. Perry's okay in the story as well. You know, like, she's constantly being chased by Chameleon or Howard, or who's, I think, her stepfather, or like almost he's her like fatherly figure in this story, so to speak, you know, who's looking out for her. But yeah, Chameleon takes on that shape for a bit of the story as well. It's okay. Turlough gets a decent send-off, and it's nice, like they said, that Turlough is getting more stuff to do from Frontios onwards, but it's annoying that it took this long, and now he's gone. So we lost Tegan last time, we lost Turlough now, and so obviously now, because we've got one story left, we're obviously going to lose the Doctor himself. Which, if you know me, you know my thoughts, you've seen like my ranking of classic Doctor Who stories, you know my thoughts on the Caves of Androzani. You know I'm just instantly going to put it up here. I don't really even need to explain why. It's won Guinness Book of Records for being one of the highest and most loved stories in the past. You know, just the Doctor and Companion being isolated by everyone, dying through the whole story, unsure if they're going to make it out. Sharaz-Jek is one of the best antagonists I've ever seen in the show's history. It is one of the darkest, most eerie, most sinister stories I've ever watched in Doctor Who. The regeneration is traumatic, and the Doctor basically sacrifices himself for Perry because he regrets what happened with Adric, in my eyes, because he refuses to let her die. And his last line of Adric, you know, showing that he is still thinking of Adric and he can't get him off his mind, I think is brilliant writing. Fantastic writing. Terrific story. If there is one Doctor Who story, if you were to only watch one story from each Doctor, as sad as it is to say that obviously it's his last story, you need to watch Peter's last story. You need to watch Caves of Androzani. It is fantastic. It's beyond fantastic. It's outstanding. An outstanding piece of television. But yes, that is going to be my ranking of every 5th Doctor story. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it by giving it a thumbs up and comment down below your thoughts on the Peter Davison era. Now, in the next video, we are going to be tackling one of the longest eras in the show, but also my favourite Doctor of all time, the 4th Doctor, played by Mr. Tom Baker. But this is the Nerdy Grail signing out for now. I hope you all have an amazing day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now, everyone.